All right. So, on this episode of Empowering Her, we have special guest Erin Wright. Erin, thank you so much for coming on the show and just gracing us with your knowledge.
Thank you for having me. I love that you're doing this series.
Appreciate that. Let's start with kind of what your current role looks like and maybe break down some of the activities, maybe not necessarily on a day to day, because I know day to day changes, but maybe what a week looks like.
So I'm the vice president of product management at Master Control. We make software for like life sciences companies. So when you're making Tylenol or COVID vaccines, they use software to help document that process, submit it for review and approval, make sure everything's safe, and we make software that does that. A lot of my day to day is all I do is go to meetings. um, Basically, my entire job role and function is talking to people and being able to understand what customers are saying, the problems that they're having, and rephrase that in ways that software developers can understand it and how to fix that problem. So it's a lot of empathetic listening.
I like that. Well, and it almost sounds like, you kind of have that crossroads, marketing, they kind of are responsible for that empathetic listening to the customer. Customer success is always listening to what the clients are saying. And so it's interesting how much that the ability to to empathetically listen can lead to a lot of different opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And product management has so much crossover with those roles as well, right? Like we're very closely partnering tied with our marketing group to make sure that we're positioning our products in ways that make an understanding, in the for market opportunities and for kind of having customers that we want hearing our message.
I love it. So let's talk about, once you stepped out of high school, how did you end up in the role that you're at now?
So right after high school, I went to college. I went to a state school. Go to a state school. Don't go to a name brand school. Save your money. Nobody cares where you go to college. um, Life advice. Went to a state school. I graduated a 4-year program in 3 years, which I do not recommend doing. I was supposed to go to law school after that, and I was just so burnt out on school that I took kind of my post college gap year. And I actually started working at a psychiatric hospital. I am a certified behavioral health counselor, and we do rational emotive behavioral therapy stuff. And The hospital I was working at did clinical trials for different psychiatric medications. I was kind of involved in some of those trials as kind of the site level of helping kind of administer the trial information and documenting stuff as necessary. One of my friends from college was working at a startup that made clinical trial software. And so brought me on there. And from there, I just moved into life sciences software, doing quality assurance. So just making sure that we were following the rules. The FDA has a lot of really strict rules about how you make software, which you would make sense for what the kind of criticality of the stuff that they're doing. And just from there, moved from different software companies within life sciences as part of the regulatory role, and ended up growing into having a lot of opinions about how software should be made, and moving into our product management group and sharing my opinions with everybody who would listen.
I think I'm glad that you mentioned go to a state school because there are, and I didn't even know this until a few years ago, and I felt bad here being a teacher, but like in our state, if you graduate from one of the local high schools, you can go to a junior college, community college, and like your tuition is covered. And so I wish I had known that because I could have encouraged students because I mean, that just saves so much money. And then I at one point had looked at some of the, creme de la creme universities, and then I looked at like my local university, and I was like, I think I'll stay home. This is so expensive.
The cost, yeah, and I got into name brand schools, and I was doing the pro con list. I'm very into my pro con lists of going to a kind of a name brand school and a local state school, and just for what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go, it wasn't as important to go to be in the name brand school, and the cost differential is just ridiculous. And you're settled with that debt for a very long time.
I think that's really, really important because there's this, if I graduate from this university, it looks so much better than this university, which may or may not be true. Obviously, if you want to go into medicine or law, there are some universities that are ranked higher. But for the most part, for your undergraduate degree, I think it's all about the same, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. As you're getting into the post grad stuff, so if you're going to get your JD or if you're going to go to med school, then yeah, absolutely, those matter a lot more for placement and networking and information. But for undergrad, nobody cares.
That's right.
And honestly, to the point where most job descriptions now are removing the requirement for having a college degree. So like ours don't have it. It's either have a college degree, have an undergrad degree, or
Right.
the subsequent years of experience in industry for the role that we're looking for.
It's interesting you mentioned that because as if you look over like job ads and you see it says a college degree, a bachelor's degree, but very few of them actually are. You have a requirement of what degree you really need, which is always kind of interesting because then the question is, okay, well, is the degree really important if it's not even adding to this, or are we just like paying lip service that we want somebody to have a college degree? Um, for your role, for somebody that wanted to be a product manager, and this is like a big question that the students always ask. It's kind of their top ones is, would a college degree help you to get into product management, or can you get into product management without having a college degree?
People who work for me and who are product managers at Master Control, some of them don't have college degrees, so you can
Okay.
absolutely get into it without a college degree. Having one helps. It's one less. We have the requirement that you have to have the subsequent years of experience
Yeah.
to make up for not having a college degree, and so it means that you have to have at least like 4 years of experience working at a software company or working in life sciences. If you're going to be, if life sciences is actually a really great place to go in and work, generally because it's such specialized knowledge, you see about a 15 to 20% pay bump doing the same role for life sciences stuff as you do for general world software, for example.
I
So
didn't know that.
yeah, we live in a very special world for obvious reasons because like we're making COVID vaccines, we're
Right.
making drugs, we're making life changing products for people and medical devices that get inserted in people's bodies. It's important that those are done correctly, and so there's very specific rules around that knowledge and framework. But working for 4 years on a manufacturing line for a med device company would be huge at getting your foot in the door for working into life sciences and understanding that manufacturing process, for example,
Okay.
and would provide that's a lot of value towards becoming working in product management for life sciences.
So if somebody wanted to kind of bridging into that, if somebody wanted to, because not only will, the students, they'll see this and they'll go, oh, I want to do something like that. That sounds awesome. Or, there are a lot of career changers out there that they might want to go into product management. What would an entry level, what would it be called, and what would it look like for, product manager?
Yeah, so entry level, brand new, you probably come in as an associate PM.
Okay.
And you're coming in either that you have worked in industry, that you have an understanding of the user experience of, this is what a life science manufacturer would want in this type of software. Or if it's truly entry level right out of college, we know that you're a blank slate and you're coming in to be trained. Um, and what that associate level is that you have a lot of guidance, that you get paired up with a mentor and you are kind of taught the ropes on your own. The requirements that we have for you are, it's your job to learn. You don't have to process or synthesize this information. Your job is to be there and do some of the smaller stuff that you can understand and that you can deal with, and kind of give you those initial building blocks to kind of move into that product management role.
Okay. And so as far as, and I know it's different. You mentioned, the life sciences, they kind of have a little bit higher of a salary. But if we could take just kind of a general average, what might a salary range look like at the entry level and then kind of moving up the ladder?
Yeah, so associate PM to a PM. So much also it depends on where you are in the world and what the size of the company that you're working for, like all the caveats and nuance and blah 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 blah. Generally, pay starts around the, let's say, 60 to 80K range for that associate to PM. As you get into the director or senior PM, it's probably closer to between 100 and 150. If you get into that director level, it's usually between 150, 200. And then the VP area is absurdly wide range, somewhere between like 200 and 500.
Yeah, that's as I've done these interviews and especially talking about the salary range, and there's been a couple of people have just kind of mentioned kind of what their average is, and it's just like some of them my jaw just drops. I'm like, what? And it's interesting. Um, Coming from education, uh, we may not get a salary increase every year. It just it kind of depends, and then it's very, very, very minimal on the salary increase. And so I started looking at some of the kind of the bonuses and that we see people get in kind of the corporate area, and they can be very, very nice sometimes.
Yeah. So the way that we, just we our bonuses are generally tied to how well our product is doing, and so we own the vision for the product that we want to make. So if we're making, the next, there's Uber and Uber Eats, right? So if you're owning the product for Uber Eats, they said, oh, we're driving people around, let's just also deliver food while we're driving people around. If that was your idea and that was your brainchild, and you were getting kind of like, you deserve almost a cut of the revenue for how much that product is making for Uber Eats. And so that's where a lot of the bonus and compensation comes from, is that as your product performs well, and as it works in the marketplace, you get a cut of how well it's doing for the company, because that was your baby.
Love it. All right. So for somebody that wanted to go and become into product management, what would you say? What kind of people do well in product management and stay in that role?
People who do well in product management are empathetic listeners, right? That you can understand, you can put yourself in someone else's shoes, understand what their day-to-day looks like, and what makes their day hard. What are their pain points? What are those difficult situations and really understand and hear what they're saying, and do that across 30 people, and then synthesizing and looking for that common themes of, okay, so here's what everyone is saying, that they're having a really hard time finding a good latte in the morning, or whatever example that might be.
Yeah.
And so if that's the real problem, how do I help them find a better latte? Is it a matter of we need to have more stores? Is it a matter of I need to point them to the best coffee shops, and kind of working really closely with, other people, user experience, marketing opportunities, your product marketing managers, to say, like, what would be a good solution to solve the problem of having a hard time finding a latte? And then being able to just that kind of empathetic listening, essentially, and kind of figuring out from there, how do I solve this problem? The other half of that is then being able to talk technical and saying, okay, now that we have a solution, we want to have a better map, we want to build Google Maps for lattes. How do I explain that to an engineer? How do I explain that to an engineering team of, you need to build this function to do X, and here's what our goal is, and here is how I want it to work.
I like that, and I think the example of using lattes is perfect, because I think it's something that almost all of us can relate to, even if it's not a latte. It's because I can make coffee at home, but sometimes it's really nice to go out and get coffee. And I have absolutely nothing against Starbucks, but I'm always in the search for like locally owned coffee stores, just to kind of support the local businesses, and sometimes they have a better coffee anyway. So tell me, and I know that your kind of your area is a little bit different, because you're kind of at the higher level, so you spend most of your days in meetings, kind of making sure that everybody is, the right communication is happening, and everybody's kind of minding their P's and Q's. But within product management itself, what would you say maybe is one of your things that you like the most about it, and maybe an area that maybe you find kind of frustrating, or if you could change, you would?
Yeah, and just, even though I am at the level that I am, even when I was when I was a product manager, I was in meetings all day, because this job is talking to people, understanding what they're saying, and translating that, and so talking to engineers about what people are saying and what to build to solve the problem. So it's a lot of meetings. But one of my favorite things is talking to customers. Our customers are fantastic and very vocal about exactly what their problems are, and have really great feedback and really great ideas. And so it gives you a really fantastic idea of, like, these are the problems. And so talking to customers and then being able to show them, hey, we built this thing. Here's this map for how to find a latte, or whatever, appropriate example might be. Does this fit your need? Does this make your life easier? And I've had like grown women and men crying tears of joy from seeing a demo of a feature that we've done, because the problem they were having was so awful and cost them so much time and effort. Yeah. But having this demo was just like life-changing for them, for their day-to-day work. And so like that's exciting. That's really fun. The less fun version for me personally is when after developers make the thing that they communicated, hey, let's make this map to find lattes or whatever it's going to be. And I say here, it has to have X, Y, and Z features.
Yeah.
Going through and finding and saying, oh, X isn't quite how I wanted it. I wanted it like, 1, 2, and 3. Can we redo this? And having to explain, and kind of doing that retro of, did I not give clear enough instructions for what I wanted? Did we not listen to the instructions that I wanted? And having that feedback communication is not as much fun for me because it's just, it's saying, oh no, you spent about, a month building this and I don't like it. Do it again. Which is not as much fun for them either, as I imagine.
So it's almost like you can be that engineer's best friend, or they can just be like, oh my God, I hate that person so much.
It teaches you how to be a better communicator though, right?
Yes.
So like, I'm not giving you the right requirements. If they're not hearing what I want, or I'm not articulating what I want well enough, then that falls on me. And I need to go in and make sure that I'm giving you the right information for how to build the best map and what I'm looking for in a map.
I like that, because it seems like your role, you get really good at putting yourself, we speak of empathy, but you kind of put yourself in the mindsets of somebody very technical, like the engineer, but you also have to put yourself in the mindset of just like the everyday user, which I think is absolutely important, because I know that we've had some programs before where I either go, who designed this? Which, that could have been the UX designer, it could have been the engineer, because I'll go, whoever designed this had no clue how we would be using it in the classroom, or we'll have two products from the same company, and we have to use the two products because they don't communicate directly with each other. So now we have a third product we have to use. I'm like, why didn't they just build all of this functionality into one product? So I love that you're just like, gosh. Now, are you working remote?
Yes, I have always been remote. I've been remote for the last 12 years. I adore it, and you could not pay me enough to go back into an office.
I gotcha. Would you, and maybe this just depends on the company, but would you say the majority of product roles are working remote at this point?
I think, it depends on the company. It depends on the industry. Our product group is primarily based near our headquarters, but not exclusively. It's nice to have the face-to-face in-person meetings because you are working so closely with the engineering teams, and that you really want to make sure that they're understanding what you're doing, what you're trying to achieve, with a product, that you fly out to customer sites and kind of live a day in the life of, to understand how things are going. So it's helpful to have those face-to-face interactions to really understand what the frustrations are, to have that real-time kind of communication. But I really enjoy working remotely. I like to think I'm good at it at this point. And so that's not a hurdle for me, but I can see for some roles it would be, especially if you're new into a role, of wanting to be on site for that face-to-face.
So what might be the benefit to, the pros and cons of working in products, say maybe at a startup versus like a very large established corporation?
Yeah. So I did the startup life when I was in my early 20s. It is a lot. There's a lot of energy. One of the great things about startups is you get to wear so many hats. Your product management, your QA and testing, your marketing, your sales, you're doing all solutions consulting and all the sales demos, your tech support for a certain degree of stuff. You get a lot to wear a lot of hats because it is so small and everyone is doing everything. So you get a lot of exposure to different types of roles, which is very helpful because you can figure out, hey, I'm really strong here. I'm not so strong on the tech support side. I don't want to go into tech support after a startup, for example. The hours are long. Startup life is not for the faint of heart. We a startup that I was at a million years ago had a couch and like a sleeping room. So if you wanted to crash for 3 hours in the middle of the night while you were working on deployment, you could, and then come back fresh to keep working on it because we had a deadline to meet. Like it was, startup life is intense. If established, you generally have a more established work-life balance. You also have a lot of tools available to you when you're a larger company and you have more money. Like you have tools like Jira for managing your defect tracking as opposed to an Excel spreadsheet. You have tools, more formalized like ADP for your HR requesting time off as opposed to sending a Slack and hoping someone remembers. Right. So like, as the company matures and is bigger, they have a lot more infrastructure in place to support you versus when it's a startup and it's 6 people in an apartment. Or even 50 people in a small office. It's a lot of fly by the seat of your pants that, we don't have funding to have X, Y, and Z software. Even if it would make our lives easier, it's expensive. The cons of a large organization is it's a lot easier to turn a speedboat than it is to turn a tanker. And so if you want to make an organizational change, when it's 50 people, you get together in a room and you have a conversation. When it's 1,000 people, 2,000 people, it's a lot of committees and steering committees and thought processes and very slow rollouts of winning hearts and minds, and kind of the organizational movement is a lot slower.
Okay. Love it. So you have had a lot of mentors in your life. And so let's talk about that for a second, and how, as far as mentorship goes, how important do you think it is, and kind of what is your definition of mentors? Or mentors?
Yeah, so wildly important, and exclusively how I have succeeded in every single role I've been in has been through mentorship. In fact, every role I've gotten and promotion that I've had is because of the mentors that have worked with me. So deeply, deeply important to have that mentor-mentee relationship. And for me, the mentor was somebody, not always my direct supervisor. Sometimes it was, obviously, but not always, of someone who could help me grow and learn and set me up for opportunities to show off my success. And really, trying to articulate this very eloquently. But just having somebody who could see the value and the strengths that you have, and making sure they're putting you in the positions where your strengths are highlighted. And that is such the most important part of a mentor, right? Because nobody is perfect at any part of a job. There's obviously things that people are going to be weaker with or stronger with. And so having those mentors to help you identify those areas that you're really strong in, and putting you in positions where that's highlighted and shown and grown and cultivated and appreciated, pushes you further into your career. And it also gives you more opportunities to kind of expand on those areas where you're really strong, to highlight to senior executives and senior directors and more people higher up in the company. Here is where they're excelling and really strong.
Okay, awesome, love it. And okay, last question for you, and I think it's a super important one. And your answer doesn't have to be related to career or education, anything you want. But knowing what you know now, what is one piece of advice you would give to yourself in like middle school or high school?
Don't date Kyle Engen. Names have been changed to protect the innocent. No.
It's very, very specific.
No, fair and valid. No, you know what? Like what you like. I was and very much am a geek to this day. Loved Star Trek, loved Star Wars, loved Marvel. Battlestar Galactica, Katie Sackhoff is absolutely my who I want to be when I grow up. Starbuck.
Okay.
And so liking what I like and not having to be afraid to like what I like or think that it's not appropriate for whatever identity I'm trying to cultivate for myself when I was in school. Because honestly, being able to talk about what was considered very geeky or nerdy things when I was in middle school and high school allows me to identify really closely with my engineering teams and have that kind of camaraderie and understanding and joking to help them understand, like, I'm a person and here, let's have this conversations. And so liking what you like, and being okay and comfortable with that is just so important for growing who you are as a person, as an adult.
Okay. And don't date Kyle. Got it.
And also, don't date anyone named Kyle. I'm joking. He was a lovely young man.
Oh man, that's awesome. So I'm gonna let you go so you can go get a latte. And
Much
no,
appreciated.
right. No, I really appreciate you coming on here and spending your time. It's been like amazing. And as a Star Trek and Marvel comics lover myself, I really, really appreciate that. So it's been amazing.
Yeah, fantastic. No, thank you so much for doing this, and thank you for chatting.
All right. Well, you have a great rest of your day, and we'll be in touch very, very soon.
All right, sounds great. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye bye.